Welcome back to Radio Taiwan International. You're listening to Geek Outs. What's your cup of tea, tickles your fancy, or floats your boat? Join us as we share passions from people in Taiwan and around the world. I'm your host, Michelle Chang, and today in the studio we have my very good friend, Shannon.
Hello, Michelle. It's so good to be here.
I am so excited to talk about today's topic. What are we geeking out about today?
We are geeking out about aquariums.
Yes.
Yes.
Listeners, if you've been steadily following this show, you know that I'm a fish nerd. So far, I've only really geeked out about it when talking about scuba because I've recently learned how to scuba dive and have just been on underwater adventures there. But the reason why I even got into scuba diving is because I love aquariums and all of the lives and the ecosystems that you can keep there. So I know Shannon from, how long ago was it?
It was last May 15th, I think.
Oh, wow. You really know. But
so
yeah.
2 years ago.
Okay, 2 years ago. Where did we even connect?
It was on a Taipei ladies group, I think.
On Facebook?
Yeah, on Facebook.
I think I might have posted something about aquariums, and then that's how we connected.
Yes.
Right? So
yeah,
weird.
Very randomly.
Random. And then you wanted to start up aquariums. Please explain your journey.
Yeah, and then you're such an expert. You know everything. You know literally everything. Every single question I have, every type of fish. You know the Latin name for every single plant.
Not necessarily. But I miss the industry. I used to work in the pet industry, listeners, it was a good decade before I moved back to Taiwan. And within the industry, of course, I did a lot of dog and cat stuff, but I love the fish tanks, both freshwater and saltwater. So we wound up randomly, connecting, and then I was helping you set up your aquarium. How many do you have now?
I now have 6. Multi-tank syndrome, it's a thing.
I love it. I mean, back in the States, when I had more space, I think I was up to like 8 or 9 in my apartment.
Yeah, a lot of mine are small. A lot of mine are just snails. I've got 2 that are just snails. My rabbit snails and my assassin snails.
Okay, so how are we going to do this? Are we going to start chronologically? Like, which one did you start up first?
Okay, let's do chronologically.
Let's do it.
Okay, so my very first fish was Ryder, a beta.
Mm-hmm.
You helped me pick him out.
Yep.
I wasn't planning on getting fish the very first day I looked. I was planning on looking at random supplies. But then I saw him and fell in love at first sight. He was just so beautiful.
It happened. He was gorgeous. And he was, I think, priced because
he was asymmetrical.
One of his pectoral fins was smaller than the other, kind of like Finding Nemo. But didn't it grow back in a little bit more?
Yeah, he ended up very symmetrical and very beautiful.
It was great.
And he was great. He's friends with blue shrimp because he's blue and purple.
Oh, cute.
So he's great with blue shrimp. Like the shrimp are...
But not with red ones?
No, I just only put blue shrimp with him. Yeah.
I was wondering if he was like colorist. So it started with a beta.
Yes. And then he got friends Bear the pleco, the bristlenose pleco.
Oh, right.
And then Cool and the gang, the coolie loaches.
Of course.
Yes.
I remember them.
Yeah.
Bear must be pretty big now.
He is. He's like
4 or 5 inches now?
Like 3-4 inches.
Okay, and he's got his beard, right?
Yes, his beard is so cute.
So
yes.
Bearded plecos or bristlenose plecos are actually quite entertaining. When you look at them when they're teeny tiny babies, as with human children, they don't have facial hair yet. But as they grow older, then you can find out whether they're male or female because the ladies don't really have a beard or bristles on their face. Very, very short. But the males, it gets really pronounced. It gets pretty impressive.
Like dwarves.
Like dwarves. Fantasy dwarves. We're talking about fantasy dwarves. So yeah, that was the first aquarium.
Yes.
I think how big was that? That was about 3 gallons?
Yes, they were in the little 3-gallon until the 10-gallon cycled.
Yay.
And then they moved into the 10-gallon. I've actually, the way that I got it, somebody advertised on Facebook that they were selling their established tank because they were moving.
Nice. I remember this. Yes.
Yes, that's how we started.
Weirdly, in many other countries, Facebook, like a marketplace or, Facebook groups are not as predominant. But in Taiwan, they're actually really great resources to find just about anything, really. So there are pet groups where people will list like, I'm moving, I need to get rid of a tank or something like that. So that's how that wound up happening. Mm-hmm. So it cycled. And then who moved in where?
The Coolies and Bear moved into the new one that I got. And they also have rummy nose tetras with them, platinum rummy nose.
Shiny.
Yes, very shiny. And actually there is one that is not shiny. And in Pokemon, the shiny one is the different one. So the shiny one is not shiny.
Oh, that's cute. So what wound up following them in? So both shiny and not shiny rummy nose tetras.
Yes.
Anyone else?
And now there are cribs in there, cribensis dwarf cichlids.
Yes. Cribs, they used to have the species Latin name cribensis, but now it's not. It's just pulcher. That's why they're called cribs.
Oh, okay.
But they are one of my favorite dwarf cichlids. They're just so pretty.
I thought the boy was having seizures because when I was pouring, I poured out water out of the bag to get them acclimated, and they fell out into the bucket. I thought that I gave him brain damage.
Oh, no. But he was actually doing a dance for usually to say, hey, this is my space against, fish that might threaten his territory, but usually for females.
Yeah, and he's got a female with him. I discovered they're actually striped cribs.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Oh, so that's beautiful.
Yeah, they're really beautiful.
Look, I'm pretty sure most people have been to a store where they sell fish. So when fish are kept in a stock tank at a shop or a wholesaler, they really are not exhibiting their full potential coloration. It's actually really sad because they're overcrowded and they're getting constant water changes. There's way too many people walking around in front of the tank. They actually look pretty pale. But if you know what the fish is going to look like and you find something like the dwarf cichlids like cribs, or my other favorite is German blue rams, they don't look great in a store. You take them home and you take care of them well and they get so beautiful. My favorites are the females because of the pink belly.
Yeah, they're so beautiful. I named the girl Esmeralda.
Oh, cute.
And the boy is Bowie. He was the first boy that was beautiful enough to be named Bowie.
Of course, David Bowie.
Yes.
Rest in peace.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm really happy to see your journey. It's just been so exciting because I think that's the reason why I got into the sales retail industry, is because I live vicariously through people discovering how awesome this hobby is. Of course, there's a lot of loss. It happens, because fish are usually the small ones. Smaller, the more fragile.
Yeah,
you're gonna lose some here and there, but it is so rewarding once you've figured it out and you're keeping this really beautiful ecosystem inside your house, and kind of, I'm gonna say it, godly. You feel kind of right. You impress yourself wow, I'm doing this. This is great. Okay. Which tank is your favorite?
My favorite now is my big one in the living room, the one that has CO2.
Yeah.
But it's also the most work because the plants grow so much. I didn't realize how much plants were going to grow with CO2. Yeah. It's every other week.
Let's explain for the layman who's listening, what is CO2?
CO2 is carbon dioxide injection. You get... some people do a jerry-rigged home thing with
yeast,
bacon, yeast, and But here it was 3,000 NT, so it's about $100, which fish keeping here is so cheap.
Let's actually make a side note on that. In Taiwan, the hobby is ridiculously cheaper than in the U.S. For example, let's talk about cherry shrimp.
Oh, cherry shrimp? Yeah. You can get, I think it's 100 for 300 NT,
which is roughly $10.
Yeah.
Yes. In the U.S., I recall selling cherry shrimp for $4.99 each. And of course, if you buy 10, then we give you a free one or something like that. But it's insane. You have to spend $50 on literally 11 cherry shrimp. Where think about that, right? That's crazy. 11, just 11, and they're these tiny little 1 inch, if that.
Yeah.
If that, maybe 1/2 inch to 1 inch, tiny little fragile shrimp. So losing one actually is very painful, especially to the wallets.
Right. Yeah. I see people in Facebook groups. There's so many shrimp groups. There's so many Facebook groups for fish. I've learned a lot. I've learned so much from you, but I've also learned from other people's
resources here. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and as far as livestock goes, a lot of the livestock that we see in stores here is actually born and raised in Taiwan. Taiwan does a lot of its own aquaculture for hobby fish. I think that's a lot of the reason why it's so cheap here. Whereas most shops in the States rely on import. The fish are literally grown in Taiwan and they will buy from wholesalers, import it into the US, which incurs its own fees. There's a lot of taxes and whatnot. And then there is shrinkage because transportation is really stressful. So for the fish that wind up in the stock tank in the States going for $4.99, they might have lost a lot and then perhaps had to pay the import fees and taxes and yada yada and so on and so forth. So same with parts like dry goods and equipment and all of that. A little hang-on back filter here is like $6, something like that, whereas the exact same model might be $20 in the US or more.
And the shops are so, I love Taiwan because shops are so honest. I have a hang-on back canister filter and I broke it one night.
I remember this. I remember this conversation on Messenger.
Yes. At midnight, I was like, oh my gosh, I dropped my filter. And so I went back to the store the next day and it was labeled $1,200.
Okay.
And I went to the cash register and he was like, okay, it's $10.50.
Oh.
Yeah. So yeah.
That's lovely.
Yeah. And the same thing would be like $60 in the
Canister
States.
filters in the US are more expensive.
Yeah.
So yes, $60 in the States, easy.
Yeah.
And the hobby, I think, here is, like you said, more honest. Like they won't sell you fish if they ask you a few questions. Maybe you should get this one and not that one. That kind of thing tends to happen more so here in Taiwan. The advice, whereas in the States, there's a lot of people. Okay, not to badmouth certain corporations, one of which I might have worked for, just employ people who don't know, so they are unable to give advice.
Yeah.
So Taiwan's great.
Taiwan is amazing. I love Taiwan so much.
It's so great. So let's get back to CO2.
Okay, back to CO2.
CO2 injection on an aquarium is exactly that. It injects microbubbles of CO2 into the water. Why?
For plant growth.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think we all in elementary school learned the respiratory cycle of plants and why trees are so important, because they take up CO2 that we make and release oxygen as part of the growth cycle. So CO2 is great for planted aquariums because it encourages plant growth. Hugely so.
Yeah, I need to trim like every 2 weeks. There's a couple plants that like my hygrophila was like not growing at all. And now it grows.
Blam, explosive.
Yeah. I have to, 3 weeks I can wait without trimming it. But it like grows up to the very top of the water and then starts growing sideways.
I mean, I think you've gotten to the point where you can probably start giving away or selling clippings.
Yes,
right?
probably. But then it's so cheap here anyway that who would want to,
I mean... coral a little bit more worthwhile. Like I had this lady asking me if I was willing to meet her to give her some frags, what we call fragmented coral, like the small pieces that you're willing to give away or toss if your coral is growing. Now, this is great. CO2 encourages massive plant growth, which is its own challenge from your standard aquarium. And this is one of the things that I spoke to you about in the very, very beginning. Like, what kind of tank did you want to keep? Because there's quote unquote low speed aquariums all the way through to extremely high speed aquariums, one of which you're doing now.
Yes, it's so much plant growth. Right now it's a jungle.
Nice.
Like the fish I can barely see the fish. They're always hiding.
So it's a Dutch aquarium now.
Yeah, basically.
Dutch aquariums are mostly known for being a garden. You're concentrating on the plants primarily, and the fish are just kind of there because they're there to produce food for the plants.
Right.
Yes. So they're kind of a afterthought. But yeah. Okay. So your favorite is the one in the living room with the CO2.
Yes.
Why?
Because it's so alive with the plants.
Oh yeah.
And I've got green neon tetras in there.
Oh, those are pretty.
They're really pretty, and they're tiny, and they're actually blue. So I was introducing them. I was telling someone, oh, these are green neon tetras, and they're like, but they're blue. And so I named them Pink after the artist.
Great.
So that one, and I've got my other plecos in there.
Oh, nice.
Yes, her name is Wanda. She's a dwarf.
You told me about
snowball
Wanda.
pleco, because it's a fish named Wanda, and plus she hides all the time. So whenever I go in there, I'm like, "Where's Wanda?"
Where's Wanda? Perfect. Yes. Do you see her though?
I can always find her hiding.
Oh, she's got her spot.
Yeah, she's got her spot, and her tail is always sticking out.
Oh, cute.
Yeah, and she's coming out for feedings more often.
A lot of people don't realize that fish have their personalities, and they have favorite hiding spots and things like that. So it's actually a lot more personable than a lot of people think.
Yeah, it is. The beta and the cribs and the plecos are all like, and even Bear the bristlenose pleco and Wanda the snowball pleco, they're very, very different. Yeah. Like Bear is always around. Like he's not naughty. Wanda is very naughty. She eats the Amazon sword. She is from Colombia. She is an Amazon fish, and the only plant she eats is the Amazon sword.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, if she's going to eat any plant, of course, that makes the one that she's familiar with.
Exactly, yeah.
So how's about future goals for your aquariums?
I would like angelfish. Angelfish are my dream fish, but I need a 55-gallon.
Scalaire or Altum?
Oh, I forget the difference.
The Scalaire angels are more of a sideways V with the fins. And then the Altums are very tall.
I like the Ultima. When we were looking at the Ultims are what I liked even better.
Gorgeous. Yeah. They're so pretty.
But then they need a big tank.
They need a tall tank.
Yeah.
Because, they're tall fish. I would recommend maybe like a tall style 30-gallon at minimum.
Right.
So,
which is
bigger is better.
I don't have room in my apartment for it now. If I win the lottery,
right?
Yes, my plans. If I win the lottery, one of the first things I'm going to do is get a bigger aquarium.
All aquarium nerds say this. It's like, oh, I wish I could win the lottery. And if I could win the lottery, then I would just fill my house with tanks.
Yeah, I would get marine too. I would love to do marine.
I'm just waiting for the moment that you step into that hobby because it's familiar because you know how to keep freshwater aquariums, but at the same time, it's a whole different world.
Yeah. Yeah, I want corals.
Yes.
Yeah, they're so bright and beautiful.
The mentality behind keeping coral is actually, until you get to really high maintenance advanced stuff, is easier than plants. As long as you've provided them enough light and you are doing either enough water changes or supplementing correctly. They're actually easier than plants. And they don't grow as quickly. But they're just gorgeous. I'm a big fan of coral.
Does anyone ever put CO2 in marine tanks?
No, because CO2 is specific to plant life.
Okay.
And the only plant that grows in saltwater is algae.
Right. And seagrass.
Oh, seagrass. That's
seagrass
true.
And algae are the only
that
times I looked this up.
Usually people don't keep seagrass. Although I have seen, obviously aquariums have seagrass tanks where you get ghost pipefish and things like that. That's very cool.
Oh, nice.
Very species specific. Because there are certain fish like seahorses or pipefish that don't do well in communities with other fish. They're too slow. They just don't get to the food.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Why I'm saying this, it kind of emphasizes how deep you can fall down this rabbit hole. There's so many species that you can really get interested in.
Like the nudibranchs, I would love a nudibranch tank.
Yes.
But that's so hard because they eat just the coral.
They're very, very specific eaters. Each species of nudibranch is different in their requirements. And yeah, that's where nanos come in. Nano freshwater tanks are substantially easier than saltwater.
Right.
Because freshwater is freshwater. If you have water that evaporates, just add more water. But when a saltwater tank evaporates water, it evaporates fresh water.
Right.
So yes, you can add that back in fairly easily, but the salinity level, the salt percentage in the aquarium is bouncing up and down while that's happening. And that's really what does in tanks. Organisms really hate bouncing around, just the same as we do. Humans don't do well when it comes to too much change. So,
right.
Would there be any advice that you would give to someone interested in the hobby? Or perhaps have gotten started, but they've just gotten your, generic goldfish or something?
Make sure that you have plants. Like with goldfish, you can have a nubius, I think.
Yes.
But have plants. Plants will stabilize your ecosystem. Get as many plants as you can.
Yes.
Get good substrate. Don't use gravel. Gravel is not the best.
Yeah, a lot of people, when they first step into the hobby, they get, rainbow gravel or something, which is great. It's pretty. But to keep plants well, their roots need nutrient and they need kind of a coarseness of gravel that is suitable for them.
Right. Oh, and also burrowing snails. Get yourself some Malaysian trumpet snails. Those are perhaps my favorite thing that I have. And I mentioned earlier, I have a snail tank. I have 2 snail tanks. One is just assassin snails. So Malaysian trumpet snails can overpopulate. If you're not overfeeding, they won't do that.
Yeah.
But they keep your soil healthy. They keep your substrate healthy, and they're good for the plant roots.
Yes, absolutely.
And if there's ever too many, just get them and feed them to the assassin snail tank.
I know. You've got it actually set up really well that way. Yeah. If you as a person feel bad about just, fishing some of them out and throwing them away, feed them to the assassin snail. It's like the circle of life.
Yes. And then you've got adorable, and then you can watch them feed. It's normally you don't get to watch them feed. Yeah.
This is like Nat Geo stuff, like things that you would see just on TV in documentaries. Now you can see in your own home. And I find that to be the most interesting facet of this hobby. And it's so rewarding. if you can make it work well.
Right. Oh, the other trick is Amano shrimp. They're the best bottom feeders.
Yes. Oh, yes. I love them. They are definitely within my top 5 useful creatures to have at home in your aquarium. They eat not only algae, many different kinds of algae, but they scavenge whatever leftover food there is in the aquarium from the fish. And they're fun.
Yes, they are. And they get buried. They get pregnant very easily.
Yeah, it's actually, you do sometimes see baby Amano shrimp, and that's always, a nice surprise.
Yes, they're like smaller than the baby Neo shrimp. They're so small.
Yeah. I think my biggest piece of advice, people, if you are interested in getting into this hobby, like I said, you can fall real deep down some rabbit holes. On the internet is a plethora of resources and information. Do your reading. If you are confused and need some help, reach out to people in communities, which is how this happened. Me and Shannon. It's fantastic. And you'll find help, you'll find ideas, you'll see a million videos on how to do things. So get in there, get your feet wet.
And don't get a common pleco unless you have a huge tank.
Oh, that's a big one, right? A lot of people make that big literal big mistake.
Yes.
But thanks so much for geeking out with me, Shannon.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yes. And thanks, listeners, for tuning in to Radio Taiwan International. I'm Michelle Chang, and we'll be back next Thursday with another episode with Shannon of Geek Out.